All right, we are live. This is the 7th edition of the Make the Adjustment podcast. I'm very excited to have an old friend, an old colleague, and a very senior executive in the professional staffing sector with me, and Chris Martin today. He's currently the Vice President of Global Strategic Resourcing and Partner Management at Worldwide Technology. They're a global technology integrator, and he brings over 2 decades of experience. Now, Chris, I say 2 decades. I think I have 3. So our guests will find that you're younger than me, but 2 decades of experience.
A lot younger.
Scaling companies, helping organizations. I've known him for those 20 years, and I will say that he's a very practical, people-first leader. He's always got exemplary results. He knows how to get engagement from his people. He's a guy, when he walks in the room, it's just energy and somebody you're drawn to. So I've witnessed him as a former colleague. I will say one fun fact already for our guests is you were my first ever LinkedIn contact in 2005, which is crazy. I think that's wild.
Early adopters we were, Chris.
We were very early adopters. We'll talk about that today. We're not laggards, we're early adopters. But we worked together at Sapphire Technologies and eventually Ronset Technologies. And I'm proud to say that he was with the company for a bit. He actually left for a short time. And I talked to our company president, Dan Foley, who was a former guest on the show, and said, Dan, we got to get Chris back in. He came back and he was there for a decade or more. So Chris, thank you for being here today, buddy. It's
True story. Dan tells me I'm the only person he wasn't able to close at TPC Boston in that room with him. I'd take it back and talk to Katie to make sure we had to get back into the saddle with them. But yeah, what a great career arc that was. And you were instrumental, right? Always connecting people, bringing people together. Just that's what we do in the business we're in, and we take it for granted when we wake up every morning that the connections we've made over the years and the connections that you bring to everything is just really something that a lot of people don't have in their lives, and we do it every day, and we don't even know we're doing it a lot of the times.
It's funny. Let's take that thought further, because we were very lucky, Chris. We worked for a company, and I'll give people the backstory for Sapphire Technologies, which became Ronset Technologies. Back in the years, let's say 1999 to 2009, let's use that 10-year run. We were growing 3 to 4 times market. If the market was growing at 6%, we're growing at 20%, and we were just slaying it. And we were having a great time doing it. I've asked other guests, I've asked some of our former colleagues, but what do you think the components of that were? Like, what's the formula for leaders as they're building we talk about culture, right? What do you think the formula was? I'm curious.
I think it was a lot of things. I think it was leaders didn't just lead, they executed in Sapphire in our old days. And you learn that firsthand. If something was broken, you jumped in and fixed it. We jumped in and fixed it. We didn't say, oh, someone needs to fix that. It's got to get done. And I take it back, and I think a good friend of both of ours and a mentor of both of ours, Mark Eldridge, and I've told this story before in other forums, but I was early on in my branch management career, and my phone rang one time early in the morning, and we used to have those old Cisco phones, and it came up 938-1910, which, as you know, was the main number of our Woburn office. And I'm like, oh boy, who's calling me from corporate at 7:30 in the morning? And it was Mark Eldridge. And he said, hey, we know each other a little bit. I know you're new at starting. And I just want you to know, if you get caught in a jam, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, I'm your first phone call. I'm the one that you call to ask for help. And that, to a kid that just started his management career, relocated up to the Jersey market from Philly, it was just like a pat on the back that you needed. And something that I think I've taken with me for 20 plus years is the accessibility that you have as a leader, and the fact that you want to get your hands dirty really put us on a path at Sapphire and then at Ronset and later in our careers that really set the tone of everything that I do in my life professionally and even personally, right? Like with my family and coaching and all this other stuff. Little conversations like that are truly meaningful. And mine, I remember the sound of Mark's voice. And when I hung up, I called my father and I was like, Dad, you're never going to believe this. The COO of the company called me today. Absolutely amazing. And it was just one of these life-changing moments at that time.
Yeah. And so you referenced Mark Eldridge. For those who may not know, he left Sapphire back in 2005 or 6, formed a company called Alcu. I don't know. They're doing 600 million, $1 billion. I don't even know what they're doing. He's crushing it. And he just replicated in many ways probably the Sapphire model in a new way at Alcube. So yeah, kudos to Mark, great guy. He probably called you after his run. I know he's a big runner back in the day.
Yeah, he is a great friend, a great mentor to me over the years, and just much like if we go back to all those people that we worked with, we jokingly talk about that. I forget, is it like the 6 or 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like the separation of Kevin Bacon? Like
Right.
I feel like the Boston staffing world
Yeah.
has that wherever you go, right?
Yeah.
Like the 6 degrees of separation of Greg Netlin and Mark Eldridge spider deep into the world of
Yeah.
human capital consulting, right? Like
It
he
is
really
because you
does.
think about Dan Foley, Mark or Bruce Wiedeberg, Mark Eldridge. Yeah, I mean Tracy Fiat Thomas on recently from New York, but yeah, I mean that New England, the Mid Atlantic crew was extremely strong and is still very strong in this industry. It's really cool, and it's funny you talk about willing to dig in, Chris. Like Dan Foley, a guy we just talked about. The first lesson he taught me was Chris, don't count pencils. It was just get in the pit, get with the people. He said that the two things you need to be spending your time with at all times is spend time in front of your customers or with your people. So talk to me about your leadership style. Like what are some of your like non-starters or foundational elements of leadership? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think over time, right, it changes and evolves, right? And over the last 20 or so years, if you think about, what gets you promoted early is often the thing that you have to unlearn later in life,
Mm,
right? Like it worked then, but it may not work now. And that's a big learning curve for a lot of people. They get stuck in a rut, or like the one way of doing things, and just watching people over time, all those people that you talked about, watching Tracy reinvent herself, watching Dan reinvent himself from CEO to founder, and that is just really powerful when you think about like how you have to evolve as a leader. Working for the same company for a better part of 22 years, you learn very specific ways of doing things. And I'm fortunate enough to have moved about 4 years ago, and I've been at Worldwide Technologies now for 4 years. Learning that what got me to the opportunity at Worldwide was going to help certainly, but really understanding the way we operate today, how the organization operates, in a very specific pathway that we operate is meaningful, and you have to change with it, right? Like I can't do the same thing today that I did 7 years ago and think that it's going to work. There are pieces though that work, right? The
yeah.
trust you build with the team,
Yep.
your team first, your leadership first, right? Like that's really important from where you're from, how you have to act towards people. That doesn't ever change, right? Like
Yeah.
whether you're your first year, technical recruiter to the, EVP of services or whatever it is, you have to make sure that you treat people that with respect and candor, because it if you don't have that, the trust you have in your team, that, and more importantly, the trust your team has in you,
Yeah.
doesn't operate.
No, it's spot on. I mean, it's a good commercial for Make the Adjustment MTA Consultancy because you're right. You have to constantly improve and have a growth mindset. But to your point, the foundational elements of core values and principles can't change because consistency is important in leadership. And back in the day, and Chris, you'll remember this because we were all brainwashed when Sapphire was acquired by Randstad and became Randstad Technologies. We had two of the core values were best people and excellent execution. And so I want to talk to you about, your role when it comes to execution. What are some of the traps where people get distracted, right? I think a lot of people at your level, C-suite, even, second level, EVP, VP, directors, there's so much to do and there's only so much time to do it. How do you execute so well? Because I've worked with you so long, man. It's like I don't know a year you ever missed a number, and if you did it, I didn't even notice it because you were on it.
Yeah,
What are some of the keys to that for you?
I think for me, like the first big adjustment I had to make was realizing that being like the best problem solver in the room wasn't always going to be the best thing, and it eventually could be a liability for me, right? I had to make sure that, like, as my teams grew, as responsibilities grew, as my personal and professional life had to shift, that I couldn't be everywhere, and frankly, like, I shouldn't be everywhere, right? So you
Yeah.
had to shift early on in your career from being a manager and solving problems to build the people that eventually can solve them better than I ever could, right? And that adjustment period is really difficult for people,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say the same thing, like when I'm interviewing, or even today when I'm interviewing people for director level jobs and VP level jobs, senior manager jobs, I need to see a glint of something in their eyes that makes them happier when someone does something that they didn't do.
Right.
And it
Right.
always isn't like I did this or I did that. And it's like, no, my team did that. And I'm more happy than I've ever been in my life that someone was successful underneath me.
Right.
That was really uncomfortable as a young leader.
Right.
Letting go always is like
Yeah.
that. But I think
Yeah.
that there's certainly an opportunity to really inspect, yourself. I worked for a guy at Ronstadt for a bit, named Jimmy Fabiano. I'm sure you know
Yeah.
Fabulous
Yeah.
Fabs, right?
Sure. Of course.
And he used to say something, and it resonates with me to every day. And actually,
Yeah. What's up?
yesterday someone said it to me, and he said, "Inspect what you expect, C. Martin."
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And for me, that's my operating model every day. Like if I'm not inspecting what I expect, I'm failing as a leader. I'm
Right.
failing as an operator,
Yeah.
and for me, that's a big piece of it.
That's awesome. Love it. Let me shift to one of my favorite topics, which is psychological safety. And again, we can go back as we have it. You and I have it. We've known each other 20 years. We had it with a lot of our colleagues at Sapphire. I'm sure you have a lot of your colleagues now worldwide. But I want your perspective on why that's important. Psychological safety, by definition, for people that don't know, is permission for candor, right? Just being honest with your boss and not worrying about a consequence or repercussion for honesty. So, talk to me about why that's important to you, how you build it, how you try to keep it with your team.
Yeah, I mean, in our business, like human capital, urgency, candidates screaming at you, clients yelling at you, people
Right.
not showing up for work, right? Like, you could get really
Yeah.
down in a hole.
Yeah,
And if
sure.
you don't have that openness and that ability to be frank with your coworkers, with your boss, with your colleagues, man, that's really tough, right? You have to be able to do that. It's not something that is given, like it's something that's earned over
Right.
time.
Right.
And in order for you to earn that, it has to be a two-way street of trust. I would say that I remember you were on the rotation, right? Like there was probably 5 or 6 people from Diana, in
Mhm.
LA, to Joe
Okay.
Santora in Philly, to Wes down in Charlotte,
Right.
Sean Brady up in Boston. We had these
Right.
like morning calls where we would talk to each other on the way into work, where we talked about what was happening in our world, in our offices. And that psychological safety, as you put it, I'm glad you described it because I was making sure I understood it too. Um, the psychological safety of that was, it gave me the ability to jump my morning off with confidence that other people were going through the same thing I was, that we were sharing not just in our journey, but the values on how we handled our situations, what drove us to those core values that we had back in the day. It was really important. And talking to someone in a closed environment, in a trusted environment, was really important. I don't think I could have ever gotten through those tough days and nights and weekends that you had to get through. I worked for a VP at one point. I don't think you ever worked for her. Man, she was probably the toughest VP I've ever had in my life, right?
Mhm.
Like Carol was
Oh, sure.
on us every day. And if you didn't know every single nook and cranny about your business, you knew that you didn't know it.
Yeah.
And that helped shift you, right?
Right.
Like, and
Right.
shape you as a leader, because,
Right.
go years later to inspecting what you expect. That's
Yeah.
what she was doing back then.
100%.
And that was something that, I'll never forget, that ability for us to have very candid conversations with each other and really make something of it. When you're in the moment, you're not thinking of it too much. But when you step back and think about how it formed your evolution, my evolution, as leaders in the company, as leaders outside of the company now, as entrepreneurs, as you are, man, what a powerful roadmap to success.
Yeah. And I want to follow up and make sure our listeners really heard what you just said. So there's a couple things. Number one, you talked about the ride into work. And so, Chris, I'm an executive coach, leadership coach, and there's two types of people I talk to. I talk to leaders at 9 a.m. on a call that are scrambling, catching up. They feel like they're behind. And other people that are like, yeah, I've already been here an hour and a half. I'm ahead of my game. I'm ahead of the day. So our listeners don't know, you played water polo at University of Massachusetts
Swam,
College, right?
swam at UMass. Swam at
Swam at
UMass.
UMass, right? And played, and I know you,
Only
yeah,
watch the real athletes play
gotcha.
water polo.
But you then became a triathlete. So I know that to be true.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned like Sean and Diana and some of the people we work with. Like, I think that is a consistent theme of discipline, of taking care of yourself, because you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. And I don't want to just steamroll through that, because Mark Eldridge, he was running in the morning. I think that's an important thing, because again, you coach, and for the people that work for you today, they should know this. Like, getting ahead of the day is an important component of success in this industry.
Yeah, there's a great little YouTube clip, and I'm sure we could drop it in the show notes, called "It's 6 a.m. and your alarm clock starts ringing." And it is absolutely a powerful statement. And for a while, it was something I lived by. Actually, I mean, I still do. I'm still up at the crack of dawn every morning. I don't have an alarm clock. If I'm not out of bed at 5, something
Same.
happens, right?
Same.
Like someone tickle me.
Same.
But there's a powerful motivator that goes behind the self discipline that you have to get things done. And it changes over time. And my water polo connection was, I was very fortunate enough to be a water polo coach. I coached at Villanova, helped coach at Rutgers for a while, worked with the U.S. Olympic Committee and the U.S. water polo team, all within the same family. And I saw world-class athletes, Olympic athletes, doing what they do every day. And, being a swimmer in college at UMass and, Division I and all that stuff that you go through, the discipline and rigor is something that never leaves you. Like, it's actually crazy to think about, like, what you put, and this, being a high level athlete, what you put your mind and your body through to get to those points. It's something that it never leaves you. It's always innately in you. And whenever I start to do something in my life, it's never just 10%.
Yeah.
Like, I have to get really good at it, or
right.
I'm not happy, and
Big
I don't
obsessed.
stop until
Yeah.
I am. Maybe golf. I haven't figured out how to be really good at golf yet.
You're
but
pretty
I'm
good at golf.
there, right?
You're pretty good at golf.
I'm getting there, but there isn't enough hours in the day for me to get great at golf. But I'm happy with where I am. But I did 4 Ironman races. I completed 4 Ironman races, and those are really. It really isn't about the race day. It's about the training that leads up to it and the discipline that it takes. And I was fortunate enough to have an awesome boss at the time who knew that I was doing it, knew that I was up at 4:30 doing stuff until 8:30 or 9, and then hopping on the work and getting what I needed to get done. And it really was a life altering moment for me, for my family. My kids got to see that. My wife is an accomplished marathoner and runner, multiple time Boston qualifier. Like, that's a tough thing. And, if your kids see you doing that, what are we passing on to our children? And that's part of the legacy too, right? It's not just professional. Like, how do you bring it home? How do you bring it into your life? I mean, our kids just think it's normal for mom and dad to be gone from 4:30 to 7, out working out in the morning.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're friends obviously on social media, and I'll see your children. I mean, they've excelled into high school champion athletes, some college athletes. It's, it's great stuff. Great.
It's really cool. Yeah. I'm fortunate enough that our kids are great students, great student athletes. Our oldest, Colin, is at Iona swimming, going to graduate in 3 years, from his undergrad. Our second's at Rutgers, and he's a runner there. And, watching them be successful is, we talked about this earlier. I'm happier watching them win than any time it was me. Right.
Well,
like, it's so
Chris,
cool.
I talk to coaches all the time. I'll say, what do you think one of the top attributes of a manager, leader, executive is? And I give them a hint. I go, it's similar to parenting, and it's patience. Because, like, you have to be patient with your kids. You have to be patient with your people. You have to see them develop, and they're going to make mistakes and all the things, right? So there's so many parallels to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the consistency that you can show throughout times, because everybody's been through, ups and downs and slowdowns and personnel changes and personal changes and, like, all the things that happen. If you can be consistent and you could be calm and transparent through all that, man, what a difference it makes as a leader.
Yeah.
Of
Awesome.
your work life and in your
personal
home
life. Yeah. 100%.
Right?
The other thing we were talking about, you were referencing like you inspect what you expect, measuring it. So a great lesson for leaders, staffing leaders, any entrepreneur, any leader, we talk about knowing your KPIs, your metrics. There's leading and lagging indicators, which we can get into. But one thing I learned, Chris, was, and this is from one of our old CEOs, Linda Gallipo, who was very tough on us. But she said, Chris, you need to know the numbers 3 levels below the number. And so you talk about measuring things. It's like, it's one thing to know that my sales team did 30 client visits in the week, but where did they go? What was the quality of those visits? What was the result from those? Like she would dig in, right? And it wasn't always fun, but it was a lesson learned. And as you get higher in your role, these are things you need to know. Yeah. So talk to me about how you train your brain, train your people to know 3 levels below the number and do it in a way that they continue to grow and develop.
It's really interesting. Linda played a large part in all of our lives, whether we wanted her to or not, right?
Right.
Like, so
yeah.
she
Exactly.
probably doesn't realize how large of a part.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah. Taught us a lot.
There is, right? She was truly a giant in a room full of giants. The 3 levels down thing sits across leaders. And I hesitated there because I wasn't sure if I was going to share this, but I am. So the company I work for today is one of the largest privately owned companies in the world. Our CEO, every single Monday, 14,000 plus global employees, knows every single start and every single term globally of his organization. They go through it every Monday. Like the executive team literally goes through it. And at first when I joined, I was like, yeah, right. Like, come on, like who could possibly do that? Like, that's what true generational leaders do, right? Like they don't just know the top line. They know everything that happens in their organization. And it's really fascinating because I think Carol taught me that early on at the branch and regional level. And then, Linda taught us that at the executive level from a CEO, from a North American perspective. And then globally, we got that with Greg and like all the rest of them. And it holds true so well, because if you only know your page, you're failing as a leader. Like you have to know what your team's going through. You have to make sure that you really set that roadmap to your team. Chris, most people that come up through management and pause at a certain level, whether it's the manager level or senior manager level, there are reasons why. And like, if you take a step back and truly look at yourself and you want to become that director, that VP, that executive, you have to say like, how do I get more efficient at what I do? But how do I learn more than what's in front of me? And asking questions, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. I used to ask Linda questions. I would say, I'm going to say this might be the last question she answers. Like this might be the last question I ask, but it never was, because curiosity was never an issue with a strong leader. They always wanted someone to be curious.
Yeah.
And if you were curious and it was meaningful, man, what a great way to have really great, opportunities presented to you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many golden nuggets in what you're sharing. And I want to talk about this a little bit, like ego, humility. So you shared an adjustment as you grew your career around, like I learned as I grew my career and leveled up, I had to step out of certain things, allow people to grow. What are other adjustments as you continue to grow? Even today, you're still trying to make even to this day, because again, Make the Adjustment podcast. If we're not getting better, we're getting worse. So what are the things you've been focusing on, say the past year, few months, few weeks, whatever, like you're like, I want to continue to level up in this area? What would that be?
Yeah, I think when you start to scale, and the business I'm, helping with here at WWT today is scaling greatly over the last couple of years, right? Like it's scarily growing, and it's a pathway that I'm just thrilled to be on. The biggest adjustment I've had to make, and I talked about it a little bit, is like, you have to have people that can do the job, and you got to trust them to do the job.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not like training the trainer, like, because everyone that you work with, everyone I work with, they're brilliant, or they're the best at what they do in their little, in the circle that we live in, right? In the bubble that we live in. But getting that trust to someone and building that trust is by far the hardest thing. And once you have that, everything's limitless.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, right? If you build a great team in front of you and you trust each other to do what you're supposed to do, my good gracious, that's a wonderful place to be.
So, and again, we can tell the stories. I have pictures over here still from the good old days. Do you remember the Carol conference in Vegas? You have to remember this, where
Yes.
we did the
Launching oranges. Yeah, I
oranges.
remember it. Yeah.
I still have that picture.
Yeah, I do.
But yeah, and I think that trust component is critical. So the lesson for C-suite leaders, et cetera, some of them walk around with this fear factor. And as much as you want to be respected at work, you do want to build that connection and trust through the people, because psychological safety is, if they're not being fully honest with you, you can't solve their problems. You really can't help them. So, we were lucky that we, for those 15 years or so together, we had it. And I just keep beating that drum to leaders, and this podcast about leadership and creating better leaders in this world. I just want to make sure we really hit that home, because one of the challenges I find, I talked about this, the difference between ego and humility and being humble. There's a belief that leaders have to have this ego and they have to have all the answers and they have to carry themselves in a certain way, which they do to some degree. They have to have some cachet. But ultimately, it's about your team, and it's about connecting and them solving the problems. You can't be on every sales call. You can't be with every customer. They're going to be on the phone, right? So you have to develop
Yeah,
them to
I mean,
handle that.
it's okay to say I got this one wrong. Like
Right.
it's okay
Yeah.
to say it, right?
Yeah.
It's not a crisis. You just missed.
But
It's okay to say that.
so
And
many
and
leaders don't do it though, Chris. They
I
don't.
know, but
Yeah.
that separates what strong leaders can do to
Right.
impressive ones, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
impressive leader says, "Hey, I got it wrong. I
Right.
held on to that decision for too
Right.
long, and I need to move away from it."
Yeah.
That's a big opportunity for people to progress. And when you see that, it's okay. It's okay to tell your team that you got something wrong. And that goes back to that, that trusted environment, right? Like that place that gets, you're safe to talk. You're safe to have those conversations. It's okay to be wrong. You just have to make sure you adjust quickly and move on from it, right?
Yeah. No,
Um,
vulnerability. It's a great lesson to learn for
I know
sure.
you had, I had our friend from Sacramento on at some point,
Sure
and
did.
and he used to say, hire slow and fire fast,
That's Johnny
right?
Stewart.
Like that
Yeah.
was a John Stewartism,
Yeah.
and that is a true thing, right? And that's with everything, right? Like take your time to get to where you need to go, but when you get there and it's right or wrong, go quick, right? Like that's the big opportunity for you.
Yeah. I want to get a little tactical, and you can keep this in staffing or even outside of staffing, but I do feel like the last year and a half was tough. It's a tough market for a lot of industries. And what are some things you're seeing, at your level, information you see, talking to your people, talking to your clients? And I'm not asking you to forecast the year, but what do you think I guess the outlook is for the year? And what's changing? What adjustments is your company making to adapt to AI, to the market, to whatever external factors there are out there? I'm just curious, at a high level, what are the things you're thinking about in 2026?
Yeah, I think AI is a evolution of everything we've seen coming so far, right? I mean, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, it was big data. How are we going to use big data to drive our business? What are we going to use big data for? And
Right.
that's all we heard about for
Right.
a long time.
Yeah.
AI is accelerating big data in a consumable manner that drives decisions in a quicker, more reliable manner. If you are not using AI today in some level of your work, you're failing,
Yeah. I
right?
agree. I agree.
Because you're missing out on making your life easier. And AI is going to replace certain jobs or not replace certain jobs. I don't have a crystal ball on what it's going to do. I think if you looked at like job functions that are repeatable and programmable, like yeah, those jobs are probably at risk of being, at some level
Yep.
replaceable from AI.
Yeah.
What's never going to happen though is the human element making important factors and decisions in the process, right? You have to have a human to connect the dots. You have to have a human to be able to make decisions that are more than just an algorithm that a computer spits out. I'm not naive enough to say that it's not going to change our life. Technology has changed our life. Look at us right now. We're
I
talking on
know.
a video on the internet, 400 miles away from each other with microphones, and it's like you're sitting next to me. 50 years ago, this would have been impossible,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
everything evolves and changes, and how are we going to adapt and change with it? I think is really going to be important from a business perspective, from especially like I'll say that the human capital staffing consulting world. My take is that we're going to get better at our jobs. We're going to get better at screening candidates for our
Yeah.
customers. We're going to get better at understanding what works. We're probably going to get better at understanding why something wouldn't work and or someone wouldn't work in an environment, and be able to stop that early on. I think that it enhances the process to a level that we have not thought of yet today, and it's
Yeah.
going to get us there, right? I think that's going to
Right.
be the big thing from an overall perspective. The markets are shifting every day, right? And this is what happens when technology disrupts work, and that's what's supposed to happen. Like we still need people to do the jobs. We still need a workforce that's effective and meaningful. I'm challenging my team to utilize AI to reduce their workforce
Right.
logs every
Right.
day. So if
Right.
I could save an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week by condensing or automating something on a team, well, man, that could let me scale without having to add.
Right.
That's amazing for me,
Right. Right.
right? So as a business owner, you think about indirect cost and like how you're running your business and the cost of running your business. Even in your department, if you're a manager, a director, like you have a cost of running your business. If you could grow the top line revenue and your margin and not grow your indirect costs because
Right.
you've become fully automated or
Right.
using AI to make you more productive, man, give me that all day.
Yeah.
I'll
It's
run to the bank with it.
yeah. There are smaller companies out there, Chris. You work for a multi-million dollar company, and we've worked for multi-billion dollar companies, and your company is too. But so there's a funny lesson to be learned there. I learned something called man minutes at Rollins College, and this is not a gender thing. Man minutes is this because you talked about efficiency. So I'll talk to a small business owner like, well, it only takes her an hour to do that every week. I'm like, okay, well now you have 1,000 employees, and it takes them an extra hour. That's 1,000 man hours wasted, right? Where you could have used AI, you could have automated something, you could have made it easier. So at your level, at the global level, obviously you're thinking about how do I make people more efficient, more productive, increase productivity with less effort, all the things, while still creating a great workplace environment where we're hitting results. But it's a funny lesson for early stage entrepreneurs, smaller companies, when they say, well, it only takes that long, or what's the big deal? I'm like, well, now multiply that by 1,000 employees. It becomes a massive deal or a massive amount of waste, right? The lean methodology that some people might be familiar with. So yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
spot on. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's different. It's definitely changes depending the environment you're in, right? If you're in a small company, your ability to be nimble is very different than if you're at the big blue behemoth, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you're steering a
Yeah,
aircraft carrier instead of a speedboat. We used to say that
exactly.
all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I think at this point in my career, I measure success differently than I used to, right? It's not about like how visible am I, how many decision points flow through me. Like that's not it. It's like, how is it going when I'm not there?
Absolutely.
Like
That's a great measurement. Yeah.
how stable is the aircraft carrier
Right.
when it needs to be a speed ship,
Yeah.
right? That's a huge thing, right? Can it withstand the pressure? Can the organization
Yes.
grow and continue that growth, and that accelerated profitable growth is really important for me, right? So it's changed over time. I used to, like I talked about earlier, man, I wanted to be in the room. I didn't I wanted to know everything. I wanted to be
Sure.
in the decision making tree. Now
Right.
I realize, man, if it's working without me,
And that's
we did a pretty good job at getting us
exactly.
here, right? I
Exactly.
know I've done my job. I know the culture's strong enough. I know that the team's strong enough to hold underneath that pressure. Man, that's awesome.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot. You ready for this?
Go
We
ahead.
worked together for a long time. What is one thing, one lesson that I've given you that I shared advice with you? Is it linear? Is it a common theme? I'm curious.
I think we talked about it right at the beginning when we talked about going back and playing golf with Dan when I had gone to work with my family for a couple, about a year or so. Your ability to stay connected with people has always been the number one thing. Whether we were working together day to day, whether we had a break, whether when you left Ronstadt and I was still there, we never lose connection. And it could be 6 months or 3 months and we don't talk, but it's just getting right back into it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that that's the biggest thing is like, don't let go of the connections. I think, the other thing is like, you realize really quickly when you have two people that are at similar levels in an organization that the first name and the first two letters of their initials are the same. You get to share a lot of things
You do.
with them, right? We get each other's emails by accident.
Yes.
I had someone resign on Chris Mater that was meant to send to me.
Yep. That's
And
funny. That's
but
great.
you learn how to be friends with people that you want to be friends with outside of work, and
Right.
keep that connective tissue, man.
Right.
That's what you do as well, if not better than anybody I ever
Thanks,
met.
buddy. No, I appreciate that. I think the phrase I used to use was business cards might change, but relationships don't. Right. So people could leave and that's okay. But everybody has to pursue their own interests, what's good for them. And, at the time, I think when you left the company, it was good for you. And then when you came back, it was good for you. Right.
Yeah, it was great. It was actually great for me.
Right.
Ronstadt had bought Sapphire.
Right. That's right.
I had an opportunity to take a little bit of the Ronstadt Sapphire money and go do something.
This is probably why you're my first link. You were my first LinkedIn connection, because I remember the day when I heard about all that from Dan. And Dan's like, we need an enterprise guy. I'm like, Chris Martin. I literally just spit it out of my mouth. There was only one name. I'm like, you got to call Chris. And that call happened. And I think 2 weeks later, you're working with us again.
It was life-changing for me. Right. I think that looking back on those decisions were those decision points, those pivotal moments in your life.
Yeah. It's crazy. Right?
Everyone has them, but that was by far one of the largest ones in my professional life, was, you making that connection with Dan. And, I remember getting the email from Vic and saying, like, meet them here. And,
yeah, I still see Vic. Vic is still in the sphere supporting all of us. She's awesome.
Listen, the wolf, if she's listening to this, the wolf never sleeps.
That's awesome.
Right.
I love it.
So,
dude, listen, you're a good man. Listen. So Chris, you incredibly successful, accomplished, humble, good dude. So glad you're part of my friendship circle, my business circle, professional circle. You're just, an amazing guy. Where could people find you if they want to follow you on LinkedIn or the social channels?
I'm on LinkedIn. You got to connect with me to see me, but it's Chris Martin, WWT, easy to find. There's a lot of Chris Martins out there. But if you type in WWT, easy to find. Just got to connect with me, go drop down and find the connect. My email is chris.martin2 at wwt.com. I'm the second one here. If you send it to chris.martin, he'll eventually get it to me, but he kind of gets sick of that stuff. But no, thrilled to be here, Chris. Congrats on your success. I remember when the idea of MTA started, I was with you in Mattapoisett, and just really proud of what you're doing. Happy for you. Happy to see the success, and thrilled to be part of the journey as much as I can be.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And I think all of us that work together, that circle of people you referenced, I think we were all brainwashed a certain way. And I try to just carry that on to this day with the companies and clients I work with, and try to create in their companies what we had in our company. That's all I'm trying to do every day is, again, tagline, create better leaders in this world, because we know that you can lead to great results. You can have a ton of fun doing it, make a bunch of money. But you can get there through kindness and candor. And it doesn't always have to be, through the beatings, Yeah. So
listen, we can play a little golf along the way,
and we can have a little fun along the way. Chris Martin, thank you very much, sir. Great to have you. Another amazing episode of Make the Adjustment podcast. And interestingly enough, you'll be glad to know another one of our friends will be the next guest on our show coming up. I should tease a little bit. Will be an old friend, Justin Priest, will be the next guest following you. So another guy that you know really well.
In Cleveland.
Yeah,
JP,
exactly.
baby.
So. But my always last thought is this. Remember, if you are struggling at work or at life, you're the one who has to make the adjustment. You look in the mirror every day. The person you see is the problem, but the good news, the person you also see is the solution. Chris Martin is definitely the epitome of the solution. That guy gets up every day, hard charging, getting after it with discipline. And again, it's been an honor, buddy. You're a great man. And thanks for being on the show today, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.